The evidence is awesome to see because it keeps piling up. And unless someone wants some clickbait to try and get you to do something different, like collagen's here to stay.
What would you say are the most significant health benefits of incorporating collagen into your diet?
100% how you move in life. So think mobility, think joint health, think muscle recovery. Like that's a very dude-centric answer. Now think hair, skin, nails, like all your connective tissue. So boil it down. Look good, feel good, move good.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like skin health is something that I feel like not many guys appreciate, but they should.
My wife this year, I'm 52. My wife is significantly younger than I am. And she bought me this whole kit of wash your face, conditioning, moisturizer, creams. At 52 years old, I've never touched any of this stuff. And I committed to her. I said, I will use all of these things. Every night I am washing my face. Never wash my face. I mean, I wash my face in the shower, but using the proper soaps, the proper lotions. Well, I'm using all the proper ingestion of foods to help my skin from the inside out. I'm just now doing the outside in per her instructions.
I don't have much of a skincare routine either. So, I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. I think I don't have any data on this, but I would wager that how you treat yourself on the inside probably has a much larger and more significant bearing on how you appear from the outside. Because your skin is a reflection of your diet, of so many aspects of your lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, you can polish it up with like some soap. I'm like, hey, I washed my face in the shower with a bar of soap. She's like, no, you can do it better than that. I'm like, okay, well, look at the nutrition.
Yeah,
I'm going to put all the foods in my body that are going to help me with my protein intake, whatever I need from a fiber intake, and just like optimize that. And that's going to be apparent, I think, on your entire presence. And hey, 70% of abs are made in the kitchen.
There you go.
Hey man, you want to look good naked? Do some sit-ups, but eat well.
Yeah. I know you guys have a really incredible story behind BUBS Naturals, so I'd love to get into that. How did you come to launch this product? I mean, you guys have so many different SKUs at this point, which is basically just like, different types of products that you guys make under the umbrella of BUBS Naturals. I happen to love the collagen. I mean, I think it's just like so from a quality standpoint, it's irrefutably pristine. But yeah, how did you come to start this brand? Because I know your background is not in the consumer product space, right?
No. Well, I mean, to start with the brand side, it really started with self-preservation. I mean, I'm 52 years old. We started the concept around BUBS started 7 years ago. So, I was 44, turning 45 years old. I had a 1-year-old son, and my wife's 14 years younger than I am. And
humble brag.
We just saying. we trained together. We ran the Boston Marathon together. We CrossFit together, like all the fitnessy things. And our well-being has been a central part of our relationship. And we find that we thrive emotionally. We thrive in our headspace when we're doing well physically. And like, if she doesn't work out for a couple of days, watch out. Same for me. So I started to slow down. I'm 44, turning 45, and I'm like, I can't back squat like I used to back squat. My running is a little bit worse. Just my recovery, like getting out of bed, a little bit of a process. And I'm like, man, I'm just a little bit achy. My wife's a newscaster. Her name's Heather Lake. She's down in Fox in San Diego. And she comes home. She's like, I found this product. You have to try it. It's called Collagen. And I'm literally like old school thinking in my head. I'm like, collagen? Isn't that the stuff that like people inject in their lips and stuff? And she's like, no. It's a powder. You put it in your coffee in the morning. We drink coffee religiously. So I'm like, oh, what does it do? She's like, your joints that sound like a wrinkled up newspaper when you walk up a flight of stairs, it's going to help with those. And that's all I heard. She probably said hair, skin, nails. She probably said all the amazing other things for your connective tissue. I didn't hear any of it. I heard joints. So I put a scoop in my coffee. It dissolves in. And I drink my coffee. And I'm like, okay. And I do it the next day and the next day. 3 weeks goes by. And I knew from what she told me it was going to take a while. She's like, this isn't an instant pill. It's not like you're going to suddenly transform yourself. But about 3 weeks into it, I noticed my fingernails were growing like I was the Wolverine.
Whoa.
I'm like, what's going on? Where are the nail clippers? And, as a guy, you notice that stuff. A week later, I needed a haircut. I had just gotten a haircut. So I'm like, okay, I've got 2 data points here, And they're written on the side of the jar. It says hair, skin, nails. And I'm like, wait a second. So my hair's growing. My fingernails are growing like crazy. Something is physically happening. Now, my joints didn't feel anything at the 3-week mark, but something else was happening. So I'm like, okay, I'm curious now. And it was the only change in my diet. It was like, eat my whole foods and eat this. And about 2 months into it, I'll never forget, I hopped out of bed one day, chasing my son around. We had to fly to Boston. So we're on a cross-country flight from San Diego to Boston and packed up all the bags, get in the car, go to the airport. We're going to get off the plane, which is normally an incredibly painful ritual for me. Like, rub the knees, stand up slow. I'm 6'2", packed in the back. And I pop up, I'm grabbing the bags, got my son, and we're bouncing off the plane. And I look at Heather and I go, oh my God, I feel great. She's like, oh, that's nice. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, I feel great. Wow. She's like, okay. I'm like, what the hell's in this stuff? What's in this collagen? And we were buying a brand off of Amazon, and I was like, I got to know what's in this. Like, my curiosity kicked in, and about a month goes by, and I read about amino acids like glycine, and glycine produces synovial fluid, and synovial fluid lubricates your joints. Oh, and then there's like extra quality around your sleep, which, by the way, 7 years ago, no one's talking about sleep. So I'm like, oh yeah, I've always slept well, but I guess I'm sleeping better. And then there's leucine, and there's proline, and these other amino acids that I just gradually learned more about, but I was just a fanboy. Like, if I met you, 7 years ago, I'd be like, Max, I don't know you, but take collagen. And it was as simple as that. And then all of a sudden, a couple more months goes by, I just feel better and better and better. So the spark of the brand happened because a guy that I was doing some consulting work with, his name's TJ, he's now my business partner. He comes over to the house. We were pitching a couple of clients together, and I've got more of a marketing background, and he sees the jar of collagen, and he's an e-commerce guy. And he's like, you take that stuff? I'm like, yeah, man, collagen has changed my life. Like, I am lifting, I'm running, like, I feel phenomenal. And he's like, oh. And in his head, he's going, that's a trending product on Amazon. That's, scaling. I've seen that on some growth charts. We should start a company. And he's just thinking about the mechanics of that. And I've got a 1-year-old crawling around on the ground around us. I'm like, dude, you are crazy. But, we're sitting there talking about work stuff. So I was like, what would it look like? And we looked at each other and we both said at the exact same time, like total spark, well, if we ever did a company, we'd have to do something cool for charity. That was it. Like, if I ever did it, I needed to feel something and be involved with something. And he said the exact same thing. And we had totally different reasons, but I kind of raised my hand and I was like, I know the charity. And it would be Glen's charity. And that's in reference to Glen Doherty, who was my best friend from childhood, who served 10 years at SEAL Team 3, who was one of the Navy SEALs killed in Benghazi, Libya. So if you ever saw the movie 13 Hours, like, a little bit about Glen's journey in saving all those Americans down in Benghazi. And we started a foundation after Glen was killed to help special operators and their families transition from active duty to civilian life, primarily through scholarship. And this would be an amazing vehicle to help that community. And this is exactly the kind of product that Glen would have taken. And he was this guy that stood for self-improvement, and he was always helping others. And so I'm looking at TJ and I'm like, well, Glen's call sign in the Navy was BUBS. So we'll name the company BUBS Naturals as a tribute to Glen and his way of life. And we were just sitting there like, whoa. It happened inside of like a 2-minute conversation. Just boom, 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 boom. This feels really good. We don't know anything about collagen, like nothing. So I called a couple of Glen's teammates in the SEAL teams, and this guy, Mikey Ritland, and I'm like, Mike, what do you think? Shane Hyatt, hey, what do you guys think? And these are like gruff, tough guys, and they looked at me and they're like, Glen would kick your ass if you don't do this. They're like, you got to do it, man. And I was like, all right. I called Glen's mom, called his sister. I'm like, does this seem weird? And everyone's like, go for it. And I was like, okay. There are no barriers to entry beyond my personal limitations. What am I willing to do? And it was a big inflection point. Like, I had a young son, newly married. Like, I'm in this total crossroads in my life to go like, do I want to take this huge turn and start a business that was really based on a social experiment, okay, let's give 10% of all profits to Glen's charity, to charitable causes in Glen's name, and let's just see if anyone cares. Cool. How the hell do you make collagen? And that was the next question, was I had to go figure that out. And it was part Google, and then it was, who do I know? Who goes to the gym with me? Like a bunch of buddies were at a CrossFit gym together, and I started asking questions. And one of my buddies, Tim, is in the food space. I'm like, Tim, don't you like sell food stuff? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, I'm taking collagen and it's a game changer. And he's like, oh, you should go to this trade show. Go to the trade show and just hit the directory and figure out who makes it. So I was like, okay. And it was like that. It was like going to the library and doing your research. And then my quality metrics were totally subjective. So again, like the spark is all based on self-preservation. I knew my quality of life was improving. I knew the one thing I was doing that made that difference. And I was highly motivated to help others. Like I wanted to see if this would work, because you see little things on Amazon like round up for charity, or you go to CVS at checkout and it's like help whatever cause is nominated there. And I'm like, if you can institutionalize charitable giving, people will participate. If you make it mindless, like here's your roundup of $1 to a cause, like people do that. And it's a good fundraising initiative. I think Amazon has done a great job of having that, like donate an extra 5% to your favorite cause, and you pick a cause.
Yeah.
We were just baking it into the product.
Were you the founder of BUBS Charity?
Yeah. So when Glen died, I was his listed next of kin in his government. Like he had listed me as next of kin. So like
that's amazing.
It's kind of heavy too, because when Glen died, like he's in Libya, he's in Benghazi, and the news cycle and the information share took several hours. So it was in the middle of the night when Glen actually, when he died, which was technically the next morning. So I'm at the gym at, 10, 11 in the morning, and I get a phone call from an 858 number while I'm finishing up at the gym. And I look at my phone, and normally I'm the guy who would screen that call, but some little voice in my head said, answer that call. And I had known going to bed the night before that something had happened in Libya. But I was like, no, Glen's in Tripoli. Benghazi's hours away. I had just talked to Glen from Tripoli. Like we'd emailed back and forth as soon as he got touchdown there. So like I knew he was in Tripoli. They're down there. There's no way it could be the same thing. But something happened in the news on 9/11. So this is, the anniversary of 9/11. I'm going to bed. I saw something on the news about Benghazi, and I shot him a quick note like, yo, man, I don't know what's going on over there. Just be safe. And it was the last email I ever sent to him.
Wow.
I wake up, go to the gym. It's on the news again, but it's Benghazi. It's not Glen, man. I'm not even thinking about that. And I'm leaving the gym. I see my phone ring, and I answer the phone, and it's like, is this Sean Lake? Yes. I need you to return to your home on, in Encinitas and hold there right now. Like they rattle off my direct address. They know who I am. Okay, I'll be right there. 10 minutes later, I'm pulling up to my house, and it is just like what you see in the movies. There's 2 black SUVs.
Wow.
With a bunch of suits outside of them, black suits, black ties, standing out there, sunglasses on. And it said, we regret to inform you that Glen has passed. And it was surreal. And a part of me is like, wait, what's happening? And then they're like, you're the, listed next of kin. We have to notify you. And then they asked me for permission to contact Glen's mom, which I was like, what? Of course. Like we have vans, positioned outside of her home. I'm like, please, like talk to Barbara, like go. And then it immediately became this massive huddle up. Like we sat down, they told me what they could tell me, that Glen flew from Tripoli to Benghazi to save the other Americans. He was killed on the rooftop. That's all they knew.
Wow.
And I've learned a lot since then. I've been to Washington for the congressional hearings. I've sat down with Congressman Trey Gowdy and Elijah Cummings, who were leading the Benghazi congressional investigation at the time. Like it opened me up to a world of experiences that, as a guy who used to snowboard for a living and work in marketing, like I never would have dreamed that I'd be in those mechanics in that environment.
That's crazy. Were you guys childhood friends?
Yeah, so I moved to Winchester, Massachusetts from Gloucester. So I was born in a little fishing town in Gloucester. My parents got a divorce. I moved to Winchester. Glen was one of my early friends. Technically, he was like my brother's buddy, but we all go into high school. We all met in middle school. We really like connected truly in high school. So it's like high school best friends. Wow. And there was a little pod of us, we called ourselves the boys. And, it was like the hacky sackers, the wrestling team, like all this little mashup. And it literally feels like the Breakfast Club of friends. And we're all friends now, 40 years later. Like we all still connect. We're on a text thread. We all stay hyper connected. And Glen was the glue.
Wow.
He was literally, he's a collagen of that group of friends. Like he's the glue holding us together.
Wow.
And he was the popular guy who just kept us all just integrated together. And we used to call him after Facebook launch. I'm like, you were the Facebook before Facebook. Like you're always connecting people and keeping everyone together. It was his superpower. So buddies since high school, we all graduate high school. Glen takes off and he wants adventure. So he's like, I'm going to go to Embry-Riddle. It's a flight school. I'm going to become an airline pilot. And I'm like, cool. I'm going to go drop out of college and I'm going to become a professional snowboarder. Like that's my dream. So we team up one summer. We're back in Winchester, and he says, we're freshmen in college, and he's a sophomore, and he's like, let's move to Snowbird, Utah, and go become professional ski bums. I'm like, this is a great idea. I remember like going home and telling my mom and telling my dad, and I tell my mom on one level, and she's like, well, you're wasting your time in college, so I don't want to piss away my money on your horrible education. So go take some time off and figure yourself out. My dad gave me the ditch digger speech. He's like, well, the world needs ditch diggers too. Thanks, Dad. And that was it. It lit a fire in me. And then Glen and I had this adventure moving out to the mountains of Utah. And he was a very eclectic guy. So he would like tour with the Grateful Dead during the summer and literally follow the Grateful Dead around selling peanut butter sandwiches in the parking lot for tickets and like make his money doing that.
Was he just a huge fan or what?
Yeah. Part deadhead, ski bum, like, long shaggy hair. We're 19, 20 years old. And like, this is in the late 80s, early 90s, right? So it's like, there's still a band. And I would like paint houses in the summer, work construction. And then, you work washing dishes in a restaurant and you're just trying to make it as a skier for him and a snowboarder for me. And it was like the early stages of that industry. And Snowbird was the place to be. Like there were hot shot, great riding. There was amazing terrain. You learned a ton. You partied your face off, but you also put yourself in great situations to evolve. And that was a central theme in all of this was like, what are you made of? What can you learn about the mountains? What can the mountains teach you about yourself? And you're 19, then you're 20, then you're 21. All of a sudden we're 24, turning 25. I had made it as a sponsored snowboarder. I got, pretty lucky and gotten some magazines and career was starting to, really take off. Glen was in skiing in the 90s, which was a really bad time to be in that industry. And he was a hell of a good athlete, but hadn't made it. So he ends up going on a surf trip to Costa Rica one summer, like again, eclectic jobs and bouncing around in the off season. And he meets a bunch of Navy SEALs down in Costa Rica. They're off duty or something, and he connects up with them. And they kind of hang out for a week or two, and they're like, dude, you got what it takes. You should check this out.
Wow.
So he comes back, and this guy went from touring with the Grateful Dead and like, ranch hand in the summer and river guide and all these eclectic jobs is like, Sean, if I haven't made it as a pro skier by the time I turn 25, I'm going to join the Navy and become a Navy SEAL. And don't you tell any of our friends this. I was like, okay, man, sworn to secrecy. I'm like, wait, Navy SEAL? Like that Charlie Sheen movie? Like we had to rent a VHS movie to like figure out what that looked like. So next thing you know, Glen's turning 25. I drive him to the Navy recruiter down in Sandy, Utah. And he walks in, signs it up. And a year later, I'm going to his BUBS graduation.
Wow.
Like my best buddy's a freaking Navy SEAL.
Badass.
It was pretty cool. And we just stayed really tight. So I went back to snowboarding. I used snowboarding to pay for college. Newsflash to everyone that's out there, parents don't usually pay for college on round two. So, but it was an awesome experience. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. And then when I got done snowboarding, it was like Glen and I got the band back together because he was stationed in Coronado And I took a job in snowboarding that moved me to Encinitas. So moving to San Diego right up the street from him. So
where did Bub come from?
you know what? That is one of the mysteries that I still don't know the answer to. I have asked Mikey Ritland this question, Clint, like a bunch of his former teammates. I'm like, guys, like, what's the origin of Bub? Because it was written on all of his gear, and he just had it. I'm like, but it was never a high school nickname. It was never a ski bum nickname. It came from the Navy.
Wow.
And I think it was because he would just call people Bub, and it was like just kind of like that enduring nickname.
Interesting.
But like it's on his, like you get a mug when you graduate from BUDS and it says G-Bub on it.
Wow.
And he wrote Bub on all of his gear.
Interesting.
Like, where'd the call sign come from? Someone's going to tell me someday.
Yeah, man. It's just going to remain a mystery.
Yeah.
Maybe it's better off that way.
I can make up my own story about it.
Yeah. No, it's cool. It's like it's open to interpretation,
Yep.
you know? So when it comes to sourcing collagen, you were just about to tell us that you ended up at this ingredient trade show. And that's how you came to find the product that you would ultimately put your or Bub's name on, right? So for consumers that are listening, because collagen has become, a lot of people are now aware of it more so than 5-10 years ago. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that the evidence really is mounting. There have been meta-analyses now at this point, like studies of studies showing us that in the context of skin health and appearance, joints, things like that, injury recovery, tendon health, like collagen really can play a supportive role. The evidence is now seemingly in favor of that claim, right? But when it comes to buying collagen, what was it that you were looking for? Because I know that you have very high standards, but there are a lot of different options on the market. So how did you find the collagen that would ultimately become yours?
Yeah. So the evidence is awesome to see because it keeps piling up, and unless someone wants some clickbait to try and get you to do something different, like collagen's here to stay. Those amino acids in their right sequence in what they do for the human body are there. And I mean, I'm living proof of it in terms of like what my personal physical experience has been. And what I always liked about it as a customer was, does it clump? If it clumps, I don't want anything to do with it. If you have to spend your time with a spoon, like mashing at it and needling it, that's a bad sign. And collagen is sourced predominantly from cowhide. Sometimes a poorer source can be from the bone, like when you see a bone broth. And that's not bad. It's just your amino acid levels are lower. It's just, it's just not as high of it's a lower state of those amino acids. So I would always say, hey, bone broth is a phenomenal whole food. Take it. If you take it with collagen or like, in your same dietary routine, you're just doing better and better. If you're choosing one or the other, I'm going with our collagen peptides all day long, purely because of the amino acid profile. Now, back to the solubility part. If it is soluble, like if you can pour it into a glass of water or your coffee or your tea or a smoothie and it just dissipates and dissolves, awesome. It's easy to use. If it's easy to use, you'll use it. And then there's flavor. Now, this one's totally subjective. Like solubility is solubility. It either dissolves or it doesn't. But flavor, if I can taste a cow's hide, man, I'm having a bad day, right? This is not like, a sirloin New York cut that just, tastes delicious. Cow's hides stink and they taste really bad. And I mean, we've all tasted it on bad collagens. Like it's pungent. It smells, and it will destroy the flavor of whatever you're drinking. So again, will you make this a part of your daily routine? Because you need to. Collagen isn't a take it once and then skip it for a week and then come back to it. This is a multivitamin for your joints and your hair and skin and nails that you take every single day. If it tastes bad, man, you're never coming back. So my qualities were subjective, flavor, and performance, solubility. That was like the first two things I wanted. If I don't have to smell it or taste it and it dissolves quick, I know I'm interested. I kind of backfilled in the amino acid profile afterwards because I didn't know early on. Like I don't come from the food space. Like I'm a former snowboarder who got a degree in political science. Like what do I know? But what I knew was how my body felt. And then when I learned about the amino acids and the importance of what they were, that became a criteria. The last part of the criteria was interesting to me, and I had just recently learned about deforestation in the Amazon. So there's a massive cattle industry in South America. Like a lot of the meats that we're eating, a lot of the leathers in our bodies and in our on our products that we wear are coming from South America. So collagen is actually predominantly a byproduct of the tannery industry.
Interesting.
So when cows are skinned, right, the hoofs go to the glue factory. Meats are going to the meat spots, and bones go to a bunch of different areas, for gelatin. And once the glues are set, the gelatin's set, the meat is set, the hides are all going to become handbags, shoes, like all that good stuff. Well, the inner part of that hide, that fascia tissue, is useless. You can't make leather out of that. But that gooey, stretchy, kind of sinewy fiber is the glue. Like that's what you want in your body. But that was all scraped up and chucked away with all the cartilage and all the other like kind of unnecessary parts that you couldn't do anything with. So it was landfill. Somewhere, 10, 15 years ago, a couple of the companies that were piling up these landfills full of carcass, piles of the cow, figured out, hey, if we treat that with a good enzyme and we can really lift up those amino acids, kind of separate the chunky particles out, we might have something that's really beneficial for human health. That's it. It's cowhide. It's ground up cowhide, but the right part of the cow that's going to be thrown away. So I'm like, okay, environmentally it can be upcycled. And if I choose the right geographic location, I'm going to be thousands of miles away from the Amazon rainforest and not contributing to deforestation. So those became the back end of my criteria, because up front, I just didn't know where it was made. So I would go and meet with a factory that made collagen without knowing, much about the flavor and solubility of it. So where do you guys make it? Oh, we're in Brazil. Where in Brazil? Oh, we're right here in this part of Brazil. And I'm like, cool, you are right near part of the trouble area. I don't want to do business with you. On to the next. And we went through like 6 different brands until I found one. And I was like, where do you guys source from? And they're like, oh, Northern Uruguay. Where's your factory? Southern Brazil. Like everything's clumped up down there. I'm like, oh, you're literally 1,000 miles away from the Amazon rainforest in a total agrarian part of the country that is incredibly poor, and that you're literally using grass-fed, pasture-raised because no one can afford to do anything else. Perfect.
Wow.
And it just so happened that they had the right flavor solubility that we could work with, and we could talk to them about the consumer experience. And they really bought in, and 6 years later, we're still with them. So it's like, hey man, like, what do you care about? And if all you care about is human performance, there's a couple different brands you can buy from. Cool. If you care about your flavor, your solubility, then you can kind of like go, okay, well, now there's only a few that are really going to match those organoleptically, performance-wise. If you care about the environment and you care about the sourcing element, just keep peeling back the onion and you'll learn more about your supply chain.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, some collagen powders taste like you're literally choking down a leather jacket smoothie,
Yeah.
But yours, I mean, yeah, there's very little perceptible flavor, and I find it so easy to integrate into, I'll mix it into soups, even if I'm getting like takeout for dinner, like a Thai tom kha soup or something like that, or there's like a Peruvian restaurant close by that makes this like really delicious chupa de camarón. It's like a shrimp Peruvian chowder of sorts. It's so good. Like, it's so easy to integrate collagen into soups, into coffee, tea, smoothies, things like that. What are some of your favorite ways to utilize it?
So it's funny you mention that. Like, if you have a recipe and you have like any kind of spice or salt or like other things, you can mask it to a degree, but you get what you pay for. So if you go on Amazon and you're like, cool, man, I'm going to buy collagen. This one's, $20 a jar. You're going to taste the cow, and you're going to taste it in recipes. And that's a sign that you need a lot of spice and flavor and salt and, that to cover it. For me personally, I'm a coffee drinker. So I am the guy who's like, I want to put it in coffee. Heat tolerant protein. And I also like MCT oil. Like, I like the idea of a healthy fat in there on top of it. So that combination is part of my daily routine. I also enjoy a black cup of coffee that just all on its own, but that as a base is the easy go-to. It's a heat tolerant protein. It's not going to denature the way whey would denature. So, I'll debunk anyone who's out there saying like, oh no, you can't put collagen into hot liquids. Like, you can bake with this stuff. Like, it is rock solid. So other recipes that I'll put it in, rice. Like, I like my kids having whole grains. I can drop, a scoop or two into a pot of rice, and you never know it's there.
So you put it in the rice cooker?
Yeah.
Like with the water and the dry
Absolutely.
rice?
Yep. Boiling water, and it just soaks right in.
That's brilliant. And the rice, there's no grainy texture?
Not a bit.
Wow.
I mean, take the Pepsi challenge. Just like literally throw it in. Yogurt is another one. Like, if, every once in a while I'll enjoy a nice full fat yogurt, never the non-fat stuff. And you go with that and just, throw a scoop in there. The consistency just works its way right in.
Wow.
So it really is malleable. Like, it will shape with whatever your diet is. Like, you using a smoothie, throw it in there.
Yeah.
Most people drink coffee or tea, so that kind of takes care of them. And then from a baking standpoint, I don't bake, but it is super friendly to bake. But think about it. You're going to bake cookies or brownies or a scone in 375 degree temperatures. That's way above boiling temps. Like, hey, man, it works. So there's just so many ways you can weave it in. And we've got whole recipe books online. And, I mean, you go to any online source, but like collagen recipes, you're going to get hundreds of them. And it's just so easy because, like, we're going to make a pot of chili this weekend. And it's an old Glen recipe because he just had this recipe book, a Navy SEAL with a recipe book. And
so cool.
He literally had a Glen chili recipe.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm making that this weekend, and I'll throw a couple scoops in there. You'll never know it's there.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'll mix collagen into protein pancakes if I'm making those. It's a really adaptable, I guess you could say, protein in the sense that it doesn't change the flavor profile of pretty much anything because it's so mild, and it's just it's a very easy way to get those collagenous amino acids. Yeah. You talked about glycine a bit. Is there anything you could share about the potential benefits of that?
So,
because collagen is 1/3 glycine, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's over it's almost 5 grams per scoop in there, like per serving. Like, when you think about that, you're like 5 grams, like that's a lot. And it's funny because, like, when I first read it on like whatever jar off of Amazon that I bought, I was like, 4,000 milligrams or 3,000 milligrams or whatever it was on that bottle, and I didn't think about how that was linked to the benefits. So what I've learned is that, hey, the more glycine, the better. And we happen to have the most glycine that I know of, in the market that benefits, synovial fluid production. And wow, that's an incredibly important thing for lubricating my joints and my mobility and cushioning. So like all that creakiness that I talked about in my old snowboarding knees that have done the marathons and, CrossFit and all the activities and hiking and all that stuff, that's wear and tear. And when you're in your 40s, like, you feel that in your body. You feel it in your 30s, but by supplementing with collagen, you're putting glycine back to work for you. Well, the hidden benefit behind that synovial fluid production that I didn't realize was that glycine is also linked to your sleep quality and your recovery. Well, that recovery cycle obviously is tied to all of your muscle repair and like the rest of that connective tissue. So like really has multiple uses. I always just thought of it as like, it's going to pump up some synovial fluid. I'll have some better lubrication in the joints, and then I can just, move around and keep lifting weights and running around a bunch. Yeah,
glycine's amazing. I mean, there's evidence supporting its, as you mentioned, its usefulness for sleep quality, reducing sleep latency, and the dose is about 3 grams. Yeah. So I think it's cool for people to, again, remember that glycine is 1/3 collagen. So if you're taking, collagen is 1/3 glycine. So if you're taking 10 grams of collagen, then roughly you're getting 3 grams of glycine, which is, I think, the dose actually used in those sleep trials, which is super cool. It's also, if I recall correctly, rate limiting in the synthesis of glutathione, which is a super important detoxifier, antioxidant that our own bodies produce. It's involved in metabolism. There's some evidence that daily glycine intake can boost insulin sensitivity, which we know is so important. So I'm a huge fan of collagen as a food, from foods like bone broth and things like that, but then also as a supplement by way of, peptides, because, from a whole body protein standpoint, I'm a big advocate of, the consumption of animal source protein, muscle meat, things like that, whey protein in general, casein I'm a huge fan of for leucine, for that like muscle building. But then to also be integrating collagen into your diet for the glycine, for the joint support, for the skin health benefits, I think it's totally makes perfect sense that it would be beneficial.
Yeah, we've got a mutual friend, Thomas DeLauer, and I love talking to Thomas about nutrition because he says, the simplest stuff is like, hey, if you can eat a couple pounds of ground beef, you're going to get all the collagen you need. Like, go eat that. But if you can't do that every day, and that's really hard for a lot of people, go supplement with it.
Yeah.
Like then you've got a blend. So get it from your whole foods first, and I'll be the first one to say that. Like, I have incorporated more ground beef into my diet just as a matter of navigating. Like, oh, ground beef on a salad, ground beef on, lean greens, like whatever your thing is to ingest it. Maybe skip the fries and then the bun and all the other stuff, but that will get you that baseline, and get it from whole foods. But you can't always get it in the amounts that your body needs for that repair state. That's why these things exist. I mean, it is harder and harder in our diet as we live in urban areas, as you're moving around, as you're running and gunning to stop and get it from your whole foods. So that's the idea of where good, clean supplementation comes from, is like, look, you can't always get it there. Go there first.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to say it. And when you can't get it there, cool, we got you covered.
Yeah. I mean, people thinking, I know there's probably some people that are listening to this thinking like it's it sounds like a fad. Collagen has only been around for, 5-10 years or something like that. But it's absolutely not a fad when you consider the fact that our ancestors likely consumed animals nose to tail or snout to tail. And yeah, they were, making bone broth is one of these like ancient foods that we've been consuming for millennia. We used to eat collagenous parts of the animal, organ meats and things like that. And now we're not. I mean, we are, whatever little animal protein we tend to ingest these days, especially relative to ultra processed foods. I mean, we are by and large as Americans on arguably plant-based diets, right?
Yeah.
So what little animal protein it is that your average person is consuming, it comes predominantly from like skeletal muscle, which is generally speaking pretty low in collagen.
Yeah. So you just touched on something super important, like where we're getting our nutrition from, and like some of the fads that are out there. And I'll call those fads, not collagen. You used to eat Jell-O. Remember eating Jell-O as a kid?
Yeah.
Cool. What do you think Jell-O is? Like,
it's gelatin, right?
It's gelatin.
Yeah.
What's gelatin? Gelatin's got a bunch of collagen in it.
Someone needs to make like a healthy Jell-O.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, Jell-O can be a health food.
Yes.
If you get the sugar-free, it's low calorie, it's gelatin, but it's got all these like bogus artificial sweeteners.
Yeah, like
and colorants.
The fact is, fruit punch is a natural flavor. It's plucked right from a tree. You
Yeah.
know that? But like, it's true. Like when you think of gelatin, like gelatin is like rich in these amino acids. It has these fats in it. Like we used to eat Jell-O as a kid with all the crap in it and the artificial flavors and colors and all that stuff. But at the root of it, that's part of the animal. And it's part of the animal that we used to eat with our ancestors. There's a really neat Instagram influencer friend of ours, the Muscle Maven, and she wrote a book on tip to tail eating. And it's like, oh yeah, oxtail, like there's nutrition in those parts of the animal, in that hoof. My mom's Hungarian, and there's a Hungarian food, I'm going to butcher it for any Hungarians out there listening, called kocsanya, and it's pickled pig's feet. But yeah, it sounds gnarly. It's actually pretty tasty.
Is it good?
And you are eating this connective tissue of the animal. Like when you're eating bone marrow at a restaurant, it's all fancy and it's cut open. You can kind of scrape it with your little spoon. Like those fats, and that is like, there is some great nutrition in there. Well, it's a delicacy, but it used to be a baseline in our diet, hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
You didn't let any part of the animal go to waste. So that's harder to come by. Like how many people are going to, take their turkey after Thanksgiving? I'm going to say this because we just did this. And we got done with our Thanksgiving turkey. Normally we don't cook, we're a guest, but this year we were cooking and we finished. I had this giant carcass. I said, I'm going to break this carcass up and I'm going to smash it into our crock pot. And I'm going to add apple cider vinegar to it, a splash of wine and all the water. And I'm going to make bone broth. And I did. I ended up extracting like 2 giant mason jars of bone broth. And I'm like, this is how you use the animal. And I let it cook up for, 9-10 hours. And I woke up the next morning, the whole house stunk to high heaven of like just full Thanksgiving turkey. And we ended up with this great, amazing bone broth. And I'm like, anyone could do this at home. But it was a little labor intensive. like I was on a holiday, so I had the time to do it. And a lot of people don't take that time. So you go out and buy it, or you can supplement with it. Like you got to find your way back to that ancestral diet, however you can.
Well, I think you have to remember that if you are throwing away a carcass, right, after you've consumed all the muscle meat on it, you got to recognize the privilege of being able to do that, right? Like we've solved the food scarcity problem, but essentially if you're throwing away the skeleton, the carcass of your rotisserie chicken, I mean that's tremendously wasteful.
Yeah.
When you consider the nutrition that you could derive from that carcass if only you were to, let it sit for a couple of hours, boiling. And that's something that our ancestors used to do back when before Instacart, before Trader Joe's.
Yeah, man. Like key takeaway, like, okay, you just got a rotisserie chicken from Costco that costs you $4.99 and you eat all the meat off of that or whatever you want to, and you're going to throw the rest of it out. Nah, man, just go stick it in a pot of boiling water, splash of vinegar or a splash of something acidic that's going to help remove the muscle and the tissue and help extract all that goodness from the bones. Let it boil overnight. Just simmer. Just walk away from it. And then wake up to the next day and you just created, 16, 20, 30 ounces of gold for your body.
There's food in those bones.
There is food in those bones. I mean, there's one takeaway. The next time you go and eat your chicken and have it on the bone, just eat it on the bone. Don't get the boneless stuff. Go on the bone. You're already going to get a better source of that nutrition. Then take the bones and put them to use.
And you could tell, by the way, when you take that broth and you put it in your fridge, after you've extracted all the collagen, it becomes like jello in the fridge, essentially.
Bingo.
It's like meat jello.
That's that jello. That's the gelatin. Like that's a meat source. It's not vegan. This is part of the animal that's going to go to work for you. So, I mean, I roll a little bit at kind of vegan-based diet, so I'm sure I'm going to ruffle some feathers with that. But just do your research. What are we meant to eat? Why do we have these things? These little canine teeth. Like they're not there for carrots.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And also there's some thinking that glycine can actually help you better metabolize the specific amino acid profile that you find in skeletal muscle. So Chris Masterjohn, he's a good friend of mine. He's a nutrition PhD. He's done a lot of writing on this topic about how, and it's been a while since I've reviewed any of this literature, but essentially the gist is this, that muscle meat, skeletal muscle, tends to be very high in methionine, which is an essential amino acid. But if you consume a lot of it, animal studies, I believe, suggest that like animals on diets that are supplemented with very high levels of methionine without glycine, they tend to see a shortened lifespan. But then you add glycine to the mix, again, balancing out these amino acids, which you would be doing naturally, right?
Yeah.
Effortlessly when eating nose to tail. You add glycine to the mix, and that impact on their longevity, that negative impact on their longevity, seems to be abolished. So the more muscle meat you eat, hypothetically, this is what Chris Masterjohn talks about, the more muscle meat you eat, hypothetically, the more collagen you want to ingest as well to help balance out that amino acid ratio.
So I say yep, like I knew that. I did not know that, which is awesome because I love learning more and more that just reinforces the point of go after a good source of your nutrition. And I'm psyched when I look at the market and I go, hey, we've got a really high amount of glycine in here. And I know what it does for me. Learning something new about that just reinforces it. So, if you're out there, you're like, oh, well, I eat carnivore diet or I'm eating all meat, but you're only eating that red meat. Guess what? You might not be doing yourself that justice. So hey, take a little collagen along with it and help yourself out. If you're not going to, eat the tail, eat the nose, eat the pickled pig's feet.
The pickled pig's feet. Is that just served hot or cold?
Cold. It is like an appetizer. It is
not very appetizing.
I can't really do it justice, but the next time you're at a Hungarian restaurant and you see cochignon there, you might think of me and you might take a leap. Then again, you might run for the hills because you're in a Hungarian restaurant, which, might be a little bit odd.
Yeah. I mean, cold organs. Yeah, that's tricky for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah, and it's a foot. So there's that,
Yeah.
which maybe isn't the most appealing.
Yeah.
I'll say that. I remember having to go to a Mexican market in Salt Lake City. We were on a ski break. My mom decided she wanted to make cochinillo. She's like, Sean, I need 8 pig's feet. And I'm like, okay, where do I go for pig's feet? And I'm like, I am not going to Ralph's for pig's feet. So I end up going down. I find a Mexican market, and they were just like, they were happy as could be to sell me pig's feet. They're like, this is great. Yeah, take them, man.
Damn. I'm all for ancestral eating, but I was raised Jewish, and we have some weird stuff in that culture as well. Gefilte fish. I've never even tried it. I've never tried that. And I would be happy going the rest of my life not trying it. But
how about lutefisk? Have you ever tried that?
No, what's that?
It's a Norwegian delicacy, and it's a type of white. It's just horrible. It's a white fish that is also cured, and
is it super smelly?
Yeah. Oh, it's. I mean, it is next level. But it's kind of like a rite of passage. So I worked in snowboarding for so long, and Norway produces some of the best snowboarders in the world. And so I would occasionally get treated to lutefisk. And it wasn't because they liked me, I decided. It was because they were testing me.
Damn. What does it taste like?
Honestly, it tastes like soured milk and fish.
Ugh.
Like it's like it turned. So like it's curdled. Like it's got the horrible texture and smell. And you're like, oh, this is like a really bad cheese almost, but with fish in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you ever had natto?
No.
Japanese fermented soybeans?
Sorry, yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I actually find that to be not too bad. I can eat natto with a little tamari sauce on it. And actually is pretty palatable to me.
In small amounts.
Small amounts, yeah. Super. They actually come served. Typically, you buy them in these like little styrofoam dishes that are, it's pretty small, like the serving size.
Yeah.
But nutritional powerhouses. The top known source of vitamin K2, which we know is really important for so many things, metabolic health, calcium, homeostasis in the body, but also a really potent source of nattokinase, which is like this like compound and spermidine also actually being studied for their longevity effects. So natto is actually an incredibly powerful, I think, pro-longevity food.
All right. It's funny because like one of the other things that my mom did in the 80s that she would like cycle around that came back around in 2023 for us was kimchi.
Oh my God, I love kimchi.
And as a 15-year-old, I hated the stuff.
Really?
Well, I just didn't have an open mind. Like I was 15. I was like, no, that's not cool.
Kimchi's so good.
It's so good.
Right?
I'm a huge fan. And I'm like, wow, like, probiotics, cool. Like you need them. But again, get it from nature and just, little cabbage with a little spice and pickle on it, and it goes a long way.
Sounds
fermentation can do a lot of good for you.
Fermentation is actually, I mean, it's one of the best ways to reduce inflammation in the body, eating fermented foods, and also to cultivate gut bacterial diversity. I had very recently brilliant gastroenterologist on the show, Dr. Pran Yoganathan. He's an amazing guy. Sydney, Australia-based gastroenterologist. And he mentioned something that I thought was super interesting. Fermented foods, like a lot of people when they eat, for example, cabbage. Take a food like cabbage.
Sure.
Cabbage, you eat too much cabbage, or any cabbage for some people, and you just get really bloated and gassy, and it's like, but the fermentation that kimchi undergoes, kimchi is fermented cabbage.
Yeah.
The bacteria break down a lot of the compounds in the cabbage that make it like a
gassy, and bloated.
Gas promoting and things like that. So fermented foods are actually typically very well tolerated. Even a food like kimchi, which is like, it's predominantly cabbage, but you can eat it and it's, it just tends to sit really well because the bacteria have basically pre-digested it for you.
Yeah. And then you end up with these digestive benefits on the back end of it going like, okay, it might be tough to swallow, like if your palate's not used to it, but how does your body feel again the next day? And is it worth adapting to that? So a lot of us just say no. And that's kind of one of the things we wanted to solve for, not to weave it back to like what we do, but I'm like, man, if you can make these healthy habits taste good, or at least not taste like anything, you're just more likely to adapt them. Bone broth is delicious. If you can take the time to take that rotisserie chicken and turn it into something like you made it, so there's pride in that, and then you can drink it and you're benefiting your own health. It's kind of like, hey man, do you live in a city but you've got like a little box of soil? Plant your lettuce seeds in there.
Yeah.
Put it by a window. Water it. you can make your own lettuce, and then you're contributing to your own diet. We grow kale and lettuce in our yard year round. Like we just rotate it around, and like we've got a little plot in a little house and a little box, and I can go out there and be like, cool, this, my morning smoothie is going to come from the kale in my own garden. And it's like, it feels awesome to be able to do that. And hey, I go to the store when you can't do that.
So cool.
Little things.
Is there a best time of day to take collagen?
Highly debated. So no is my straight answer. I like it in the morning because it's going to absorb through my body through the entire day. There's a whole nother realm of study, folks, that love it for evening because of that glycine and what it's going to do overnight. So take it in the evening. There's another study that promotes it 30 minutes before fitness and exercise. And that's one of the most predominant studies that says its absorption during exercise is advantageous for that repair cycle, even though it's like before you're actually doing the activity. Because you always think like, oh, take the protein afterwards. No, you take your collagen before. And now we hear that you can take a lot of protein after fitness and exercise, and the absorption rates are a lot higher than previously thought.
Yes, I saw that study, yeah.
Which is awesome for those of us that just, don't ever kind of go. We all go, some of us go uncapped on their protein intake. So
yeah, there's like no upper limit, essentially. Like your body will, I mean, there was already, we already kind of knew that, but this study, I think, was just a further, it was a very, it was just a very well-designed study that showed that, especially in the post-workout setting, that there really is no upper limit. Like your body will utilize whatever you throw at it.
So I would say collagen, get in where you fit in. Where does it work for your day? Because there's not, you might have some hyper-specific examples, but for the most part, just take it. But take it every day. That's what's the kicker. So figure out your routine and just use it every day. Don't skip. On other products, you can kind of cycle in and cycle out. And I know a lot of folks that do that, like, oh, creatine, like they won't use it religiously 365 days a year. No, you cycle on it for 30 days. You're doing some muscle growth, or you're curious about the cognitive benefits of it, or whatever else is going on with it. But it's not like religious every day. Collagen is take it every day because you're going to keep teaching your body to produce its own collagen endogenously. Like you want it to keep producing. But if you don't put it in your body, it's not going to do that job.
Yeah. It's doing you no good sitting in the jar.
Yeah, and exactly. So other products, like we have an MCT oil. Like we have a coconut oil broken into a medium chain triglyceride. It's my functional creamer. It's my daily accompaniment in my coffee. If I drink that after, say lunchtime, forget it. I'm up for hours. Like it's going to blow my whole daily routine. So some things, be smart. Like if you're going to take something that's going to enhance your energy and, your mental focus and clarity, but it's going to have that kind of body high element to it, well, take it judiciously in the morning, like when you're going to be awake for a long time. Don't do it with your evening cup of coffee or, take it with tea at night and think you're going to go right to sleep. That would be a mistake.
Yeah. No, I love you guys make Halo creamer. It's like a coffee creamer. It's super tasty. I often these days drink my coffee black primarily because I used to drink my coffee and then fast for 2 to 3 hours before I would eat my first meal of the day.
Yeah.
Now I drink my coffee and like 20 minutes later, I'm also having some kind of like food along with it. And then I usually hit the gym. I'm now working out in the morning. I like to eat something before it. But typically when I am anticipating that I'm not going to be able to eat after my morning coffee, if I'm like on the road or on the go or something, it's always nice to be able to add some form of healthy fat to your coffee because it slows the absorption of the caffeine, less prone to the jitters, easier on the stomach. And Halo creamer, it's 10 out of 10. It's great.
Yeah, it's easy. It's funny because like I have so many people that came to me when we were early on kind of conceptualizing an MCT oil powder and like what do we want to put in it? What do we not want to put in it? And same thing, right? I tested everything on Amazon and I'm looking around at all that stuff and I'm like, acacia fiber seems to be this one that's fairly popular, cornstarch. And I'm like, nah, man, I don't want any of that stuff. I want a good creamy taste. I want to have a delicious cup of coffee. And so, I was looking at cassava root and tapioca and I'm like, oh, well, this downside, it absorbs less oil. So you can't have 7-8 grams per serving. But I'm like, well, why would I want 7 or 8 grams of MCT oil if it's going to like run through my body and I'm going to race to the bathroom?
Yeah.
Like not what I'm looking for. 5 grams per serving, 6 grams per serving is a magic amount that most everyone can tolerate. So I don't want the one where you're going to poop your pants.
Yeah.
I want the one where you're going to get those benefits and have it work. So it's kind of like flavor meets performance, and keep it simple. 2 ingredients, just make it easy.
Yeah, it's super tasty. Blends really well. I love it. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
Going back to collagen, is there a specific again, like it's hard to we reach such a wide audience and everybody's different, but in terms of like a daily dose, do you think just getting some is better than none? Do you personally aim for a certain number of servings per day?
Yeah, so I'm a 1-a-day guy. Like, I want to take it once, I want to do it, and I want to move on with my day. Most of the studies that I've seen is like, hey, it's kind of like vitamin C. Like, you kind of hit an upper limit, and then you're just going to pee out the rest. So some of the studies that I've read say, look, get to 20 grams, and then you're kind of hit your sweet spot. With women, it can be up to 15 to 20 grams. I think that's probably based on just body mass. But most everything lands at 20 grams. That's why most every jar you're ever going to see, like, your main ones that you'll find will just say 20 grams, 20 grams. Interestingly, there's some studies that are pointing north of that, and there's some that are saying it could be as low as 15 grams. 20 is like just your safe daily number. A lot of the sports nutritionists that I do some work with, and our product is NSF certified for sports, so we work with a ton of teams in Major League Baseball. Like, we're in over 2/3 of the locker rooms of like most every team.
Love that.
If you happen to be a fan of the Mets or the Yankees, I could talk to a couple guys.
I mean, as a New Yorker, I guess I should be, but not a sports fan.
In general,
I'm not a sports fan, but I'm just not. I don't follow. But
easy. But so I talked to some of the nutritionists there, and they will create a regimen for their athletes on injury recovery that will like take the dosage up to 40, 60 grams a day. And most of the studies that I'm reading are saying like, well, that's probably overshooting the mark. On your everyday dosage, take 20 grams. And that's what most every jar is going to make a recommendation around. And you might be able to get by with 15 or 10 grams, but that there's not enough study to support that you should use less. It's really always hovers right back to 20.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, I feel like a lot of the glycine studies use a dose of between like 3 and 6 grams of glycine. But again, collagen is 1/3 glycine. So to hit that glycine dose, that adds up to roughly 10 to 20 grams of collagen on a daily basis. You can't necessarily extrapolate from the glycine studies that collagen is going to be totally equivalent, because maybe there are competing transport mechanisms with the different amino acids that you get with collagen, but nonetheless, like, fairly safe to assume that collagen, it is the natural source of glycine. It's the natural glycine vehicle found in nature. So,
well, when you think about like, how do you take a hide of an animal and turn it into this fine white powder?
Yeah.
The processing, the flow chart is what they call it, of like how it ends up in that process. I mean, you're talking about enzymes that is kind of like your secret recipe. It's like how you make your sauce versus somebody else. And that enzyme like lifts up those amino acids, it separates out everything, and then you're effectively drying this into a powder, and then you're breaking it up and you're drying it again, and you're like, you're just constantly putting it through that cycle. So it's a fairly clean process. There's a lot of water that gets used in it. Some of the like less, I would say some of the more industrial companies would probably use some ammonia and some other products in there that you go like, yeah, I don't want that in there. So again, look at your sourcing. But when you have a good source of collagen coming through that, like that recipe is going to yield a powder, and it's also these enzymes, and then basically a bunch of grinding and drying, and then more drying, and then more grinding. You're just making it into a powder, like it's hide to powder. So there's not a lot of complex processes to it where you're bastardizing that raw material. Like, you're just extracting those enzymes, and it's kind of a beautifully simple process to take ground up cowhide and put it into a powder and then throw it in your in your diet.
Yeah. No, you can tell that it's a really pure product. And your guys' branding, it's incredible. Yeah, I'm such a huge fan, man. Honored to work with you guys.
Thanks, man. It's a lot of fun, because when we heard about your show and then I started listening to your show, you sort of have these things where you're like, you know what? Like, I wonder if. And we're a young, small brand. Like, we're independently owned. We're out there doing our own thing. We're not owned by Nestle and these big giants. And we care about the quality. Like, and when straight up, like, this is the fanboy stuff. I heard your show. I started listening to it, and I'm like, I wonder if, like, would we pass the test? And, you know, we take our accreditations very seriously, and we take, you know, like, I'm the jock in me loves being able to say, yeah, we're in the locker room of the Yankees and the Red Sox and all these teams, but the integrity of that matched by your sniff test, because, you know, your agent was like, oh yeah, we'll check it out. We offer no guarantees.
Yeah, well, no, I'm super happy that you're saying that, and yeah, it's true. I mean, I turn down way more brands than I say yes to. I mean, integrity is super important to me, and I could tell from a mile away that you guys were, you know, really solid where integrity, transparency, and all that is concerned. And so, yeah, he sent me your product. I tried it. I started using it. And I've been a huge collagen fan for years at this point anyway. So, I mean, I was just like, why not, you know? And then the fact that you guys have this charitable component too, such a heartfelt story. Yeah, I couldn't say no.
Yeah, it's definitely an odd way to go from, hey, like, you know, here I was in my 20s as a snowboarder to working in the action sports space for a decade to having a best friend who serves in the Navy. And then now you've got a brand that literally the North Star of every action that we take is guided by what would Glen do? Like, you know, Glen would give to charity. He would help others. Glen was the ultimate guy that stood for self-improvement. Honestly, it was kind of obnoxious being best friends with him because I always had to level up. And it's a joke, but like, he literally was that guy. So, hey, if we're going to put his name on the jar, it better be NSF for Sport certified. It better be Whole30 approved. It better have these markers of quality and integrity that we can proudly stand behind, because, you know, if you see it on a shelf and you know what to look for, these are rare. You don't see those. And we want to have that like front and center to greet people, to know that they can go out there and without having to break their wallet, get some quality.
Well, I think also people probably don't realize that those, correct me if I'm wrong, but those certifications are probably expensive to attain.
Yeah, they're not cheap. And, you know, NSF for Sport is a nonprofit. You know, the National Sanitation Foundation, they don't care if you're going to fail or pass. It's a test. It's a lab test. Does your product have the integrity behind it? Does it have the quality of the ingredients? Can you match your label claims? Or are you full of shit? And I remember getting in really hot water with them on an early batch because our sodium count was off by about 15 milligrams. Okay, we're not talking grams here, we're talking milligrams.
Yeah.
And they sent me like a fail notice.
Wow.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we can't fail. And I had to get them on the phone and talk to them, and we had to retest. And it turns out that on our label, like, we were off just by that little amount, because, you know, like, we were off. Like, it was a mistake. It's on the brand side. So we went like, okay, we have to do more testing before it even goes to NSF for their testing, just on the sodium level. And they don't care. But I care that they don't care, because it means no matter what, if I get that on there, the consumer on the back end knows that this product has passed every rigorous standard that is out there for, you know, for our case, it's human performance.
Super interesting. Yeah. I mean, I one day aspire to have a product of my own. I don't yet know what that looks like, but one of the things that I love about your guys' brand is that it's so, just the simplicity of it, and that your guys' hero products are essentially single ingredient items, you know, like, which is what I would want. Like, I would want something for myself, like a brand that's super buttoned up, single ingredient items, just the basics, you know, just with super high quality that I personally would stand behind. Things like, you know, I mean, collagen is like amazing. I know you guys do like a coffee that is super, super tasty, actually very impressive. You know, but you guys have like an amazing coffee, and yeah, so I'm just a big fan. It's inspiring. It's cool.
Thanks, man. I mean, one, you're in the best position. You know, I said this to you earlier, like, you've got resources around you. Like, the minute you hit that spark and that idea, you better be calling me. Look, here's the roadmap. Here's
Yeah.
every single mistake to make along the way. And
Saves me some money, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not in any rush. You know, I feel like that is a workload in and of itself that I don't know if I need right now in my life, but because I'm pretty happy. Like, I love the way things are. I love the platform. I love my audience. Like, and I could just keep doing this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, but we hope you do, because there's a lot of us that learn a ton that aren't willing to go and read the studies and do that level of exhaustive interviews that you're willing to do, and then distill it down to a level that the rest of us can get and like kind of apply it in our daily lives. So you are performing a human service that is greatly appreciated. And I know I'm speaking for everyone out there when I say that.
Thank you, man. Well, I know that you've extended an exclusive, super generous offer to my listeners. People can go to bubsnaturals.com and use code GENIUS for 20% off. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
Super appreciated. bubsnaturals.com, code GENIUS, 20% off. I've got one last question for you. This was super fun, but before we get to that, where can people find you on like social media, connect with the brand, connect with you personally?
Yep. So, one, you're always talking to a human with us. Like, unless it's like midnight on a Saturday, you're getting a bot that's going to try and get you to like come back and talk to us later. We are a very human company. I mean, that's super important to me. So at BUBS Naturals for Instagram, for TikTok, for Meta, Facebook, all the things. And, you know, predominantly for me, like it's Instagram. So like if you send a message, it's a DM on Instagram, I'll make sure like I hear about it. If it's like something like, hey, can you ask Sean this? I'll get that message and I'll get to respond back to it. That's always important to us. But social media, you know, we'll run content and stuff across there and just try and share everything that we're doing and, you know, having those great life adventures. As a brand, you know, like we definitely try and have some fun out there. I mean, one of our mantras is die young as late as possible. So we're out there having some fun with it, but it's, you know, it's not all stodgy, you know, nutrition stuff.
No, I love it, man. I love it. Well, keep up the good work. Last question. What does living a genius life mean to you?
It means applying yourself in the best way possible as often as possible. So I would say if I'm going to extrapolate on that, if you're going to eat food, eat the best food. If you're going to be in a relationship, be the best you can be in that relationship. If you're going to show up to work, show up to work. If you're going to get after it and go for a run, like put your shoes on and go do it. So we don't always do that, but it's something to strive for.
Yeah, I love that, man. Truer words never spoken. Thanks for coming in. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.